All right, hey, it's Mike. Thanks for tuning back in. It's Friday, which means Attic Find Friday, best day of the week. Everybody else is arguing about, like Beckett grading scales changing, and I'm here talking about awesome things found in attics. So, I do this every week, Attic Find Friday. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, or if you just haven't subscribed yet, but you watch some of my videos, really helps a lot. I appreciate it. I'm going to jump right in. This is actually a pretty sad story that turned into a positive by the surviving family. If you're not familiar with Asperger's, which is an old diagnosis, it's now on the autism spectrum or autism spectrum disorder. It is, if you have Asperger's, you can be characterized by or affected by obsessive, not obsessive compulsive, but just being obsessed with certain things or having strong knowledge about certain things. And Dale Watts was diagnosed with Asperger's, and he was obsessed with collecting, and he had a lot of comic books and sports cards and other collectibles. And as he was raising a family, he basically was a hoarder. His ex-wife called it hoarding, and he had stuff all through their house, and it became a huge embarrassment to the family. They weren't even allowed to talk about it because he was very, very sensitive about the collection of just in boxes everywhere, covered with blankets all through the house. His ex-wife said the collection became insidious in the house. They fought over it for years. Ultimately, she filed for divorce from him and, against her attorney's wishes, asked for none of the collection. Apparently, her attorney felt like there could be some value in the collection, and he said, you should ask for half or whatever. And she said, no, she didn't want anything to do with it. It destroyed their family, and she would live to regret that. She also said it was embarrassing and sad to live with for all those years. The son, Darren, was really embarrassed by it. They would have friends over, and they just wouldn't talk about the piles of things everywhere. He didn't know what was in it. Darren, the child, didn't know what was in the boxes. He wasn't allowed to look through them, wasn't allowed to look at them, had no idea that there was anything of value in them at all until his father passed away. His father had Asperger's. He was also an attorney, so he was certainly high functioning, of course, which most people with Asperger's are. And Darren went through their Detroit house after his father's passing and was shocked to find under the blankets was an insane collection of very, very valuable comic books, sports cards, even vintage Star Wars toys that were just never opened. And as you know, collectibles, if they're not opened, they're worth a lot more money. And he talked about how nobody back then really collected that way at that time. Nowadays, people are buying what they think are going to be valuable collectibles and not opening them. And so more and more people do that, and they're less and less valuable. But you're buying Star Wars toys in 1979 or whatever, you're probably opening them and playing with them. But Dale Watts did not open them. He just stored them. And Darren Watts had 3 full shipping containers loaded up with all the stuff that came out of the house. And the stuff is pretty insane, the things that Dale Watts had collected, and he had just bought them and put them aside. There were over 1 million items in the collection, 300,000 comic books, and Darren said just as many sports cards. I didn't get a lot of information about the sports cards. That was a tough one. I have a few of them here, but the focus was really on the comic books. So first of all, there's the biggest one is the first Superman issue, not the Action Comics one, which I've talked about a couple times in other previous videos, but the actual Superman issue 1. Darren sent it off to get graded, sent a lot of these off to get graded. This one came back a CGC 7, valued at approximately $3.5 million. Now, Darren also, because that's the most valuable one, and because he said it was so private and so embarrassing as a child, he wanted to be the opposite, and he wanted to share the collection with everybody. When he realized what he had, he decided he wanted to bring it out into the public. And he had a childhood friend who wasn't even aware of Darren's father's issues with collecting and his obsession. This childhood friend became a filmmaker, and they decided they would make a documentary together about Dale Watts' life. It's called Selling Superman. You can find the information on it on sellingsuperman.com. I think I'm going to probably watch it, even though I'm not into sports comic books, just because it's a really cool story. Of that Superman issue 1, only 2 of them have ever been graded higher. It's one of the most valuable comic books of all time. There's also a Tales of Suspense issue, which is the first Iron Man. For sports cards, he's got the Pete Rose rookie, 53 Topps Jackie Robinson, and Mickey Mantle cards. So those are the 3 cards I was able to get that came from his collection. Nothing spectacular, but certainly very, very good vintage cards that I'm not able to afford. So Darren is traveling the country, sharing his collection with people. He talked about how he had an issue. It was the 4th issue of Iron Man, I think, and a military veteran bought it from him. And when Darren handed it to the veteran started crying and talked about how when he was overseas, it was the reading about these comic book characters is what helped carry him through that time being deployed. It's powerful stuff. It's just really, really cool. He said instead of it being secret, hidden, he wanted people to enjoy it, share in it. I really like this philosophy. I'm curious, what would you do if you inherited all these and it had been a family shame, a source of family shame? Would you just sell them all off? Would you want it to be public what your father had collected, or your mother, or whoever? His ex-wife, Darren's mother, said a cloud has been lifted, and she's really proud of her son for bringing it out of the shadows. Other issues of comic books, A Journey into Mystery, 2 of those issues. The first Batman ever, CGC 8, just sold for $1.11 million on Heritage auctions. Quite a few of them just sold on Heritage. Most of them were worth $1,000 to $5,000, but that first Batman sold for over $1 million, which is pretty awesome. CGC actually, we've talked about how SGC and PSA have put the name of a collection on the labels. So like Black Swamp Find, you can find on labels. CGC put a label, the name of the collection on their labels for all of his comic books. They called it the FANTAST collection because that was his online persona, FANTAST. And so on the front of the labels that are associated with this collection, they have an image that commemorates the FANTAST collection. And then on the back of it, they have images on the back of the label that kind of tell the story of Dale Watts' life. It's really cool, and it's the first time CGC has done anything like that. He also had the Incredible Hulk issue 1 that got a CGC 7.5, X-Men issue 1 that got a 7, Daredevil issue 1 that got an 8, Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man issue 1 also got an 8, Silver Surfer issue 1 got an 8.5, Fantastic Four, 5 issues of #1 Fantastic Four. And my favorite, first issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles got a 9.4. Pretty cool stuff. This is the kind of stuff I love. If you have anything like this, let me know. I got an email from a subscriber who has a story he wants to share with me if he can get his partner's or his friend's approval. So I'm excited about that one. I'm hoping he lets me tell his story because it's really, really interesting. The items that they pulled out of storage or out of an attic, maybe, I don't remember. I don't have the story yet, but he told me what it was, and I think my subscribers will be really interested in that one. So let me know what you think. What would you do if you ended up inheriting something like this in this situation? For this week, I've got more videos this weekend, of course. Next week, I'm on Hobby Think Tank again. I had an episode last night on Hobby Think Tank on building the $1 million sports card shop. It was a lot of fun. Comments have been really positive. And then next week, I'm on Hobby Think Tank again on Thursday, Anemone Hobby Hotline Saturday morning on Bench Clear Media for my first time. So come and watch me fumble around and look like an idiot. And, comment, and I appreciate it. All right. Thanks very much for watching, you guys. Have a great weekend.